Welcome to the Investor Talk Show. I'm your host, Neil Peterson from REI, where we unpack insight, strategies, and real opportunities shaping South Africa's property and investment landscape. And today we're focusing on a sector that drives jobs, economic growth, and also tangible value, property development. But let's face it, accessing funding for developments has become tougher than ever. There's rising construction costs, there's stricter lending criteria, and also risk-averse financiers have also made it challenging for seasoned developers to get projects off the ground. So to help unpack what smart funding really looks like in this environment, I'm joined by Darrel Rose. He's the Regional Investment Manager at Business Partners based in Gauteng. And as you know, Business Partners being one of South Africa's most respected alternative financiers, backing thousands of entrepreneurs and developers with tailored funding solutions that go beyond the traditional banking model. Darrel, welcome to the Investor Talk Show. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, and nice to be here today.
Great. So Darrel, let's just set the scene a little bit, and specifically to the student housing market. I mean, we've seen that Gauteng remains South Africa's education hub, yet the student housing shortage continues. So how would you describe the current state of the market?
Well, if you look at the student housing currently, there's estimated that there's over 500,000 shortages of beds right across South Africa. And that caters for your FETs, your TUTs, as well as your mainstream university. So there's a massive shortage of student housing at this stage in South Africa.
All right. So, I mean, are you seeing stronger funding demand from private developers or from institutions partnering with universities and TVET colleges?
What we've seen lately, especially from a business partners, there's a lot of individuals that are entering the market, whether they've got existing student accommodation or new ones they're busy building, or existing student accommodation they're actually acquiring. And recently we've seen a lot around guys buying student housing that's NSFAS approved, a lot around guys that are doing direct leases with students, as well as certain areas where guys are actually going into agreements with the university. So those are the three pillars that we've seen a lot, but there's a big take-up on student housing at this stage.
Okay, great. So when it comes to student accommodation, what kind of projects does Business Partners typically fund? I mean, new builds, or is it refurbishments or conversions?
We actually do a lot, all three.
Mhm.
So we
Okay.
actually do new builds as well, where at least the developer or the owner should have had a bit of experience in student housing. So we can do new builds. We do refurbishments where the guy might have had a residential properties converting now into student housing. Alternatively, guys that do have a student accommodation that's adding additional rooms to their particular property.
Okay, great. So what are the minimum requirements in terms of scale, compliance, or accreditation that make a project bankable in your eyes?
Okay, for us specifically, it's a location. So we need to understand where the property is located. Normally within a 5 kilometer range of university. Anything above that, there's obviously additional costs involved with transport and that. But so for us, location is first. Secondly, it's the requirements from the university. So the university needs to basically accredit that particular student housing. And then lastly is if they go to the NSFAS route, there's obviously certain NSFAS approvals that comes with that as well.
Excellent. So let's just navigate Gauteng's infrastructure and municipal dynamics a bit. I mean, we've seen that Gauteng developers often cite municipal approvals, bulk services, and zoning delays as major hurdles. How does this influence your appetite for funding in the province?
I must admit, it does a lot. For instance, if you look at places like your Brixton area that's used to be a student hub, they've come under a lot of pressure with water restrictions and stuff like that. So from a business partner's view, I won't say reluctant, but we basically do a lot more due diligence if you want to invest in that particular area. But you're quite correct. Delays from municipalities, infrastructure decay, lack of resources does influence our decision when it comes to investing in student housing. Um, Having said that, I must say that if you basically go from a residential unit and you actually convert to student housing, the requirements is not so stringent because you don't have to really convert or rezone your whole property. What you can do is you can go to the municipality and get what we get consent to have a student housing on that particular premises. And that consent obviously comes with your neighbors agreeing to it. You have sufficient parking and sufficient evolution facilities for your students. So that's an easier way to get around the whole rezoning that might take 2 years to get through that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, student housing can be a stable asset once, I mean, operational, but, development phase always tends to be a little bit risky. How does business partners assess and also price that risk?
Okay, so when it's a development risk, what we normally try and do is we try and protect ourselves during the development phase. So when it comes to business partners, we would say if we finance you for development risk, we want to be protected. And that protection can come with having additional security outside of that particular development. So if anything goes wrong, we then have a backstop to actually look at liquidating that asset to then cover ourselves. But we're more stringent on that because of the development that has to still take place. And normally we know with developments, it's a lot of risk and anything can go wrong during
Okay,
that particular, yeah.
absolutely. So, you're more comfortable funding post-construction income producing stock, or are you open to construction stage risk if the fundamentals are solid?
For us, it's easier to do one that's already constructed
Mm,
because we
mm.
know there's no development risk and we are aware that it's income producing immediately from day one if all the requirements are in place. Yeah.
Okay, good. So what does your ideal student housing client look like? I mean, is it a seasoned developer, first-time entrepreneur, or a partnership with an operator?
So for us, it's a guy that have done this before, so he must have experience in this particular industry. So normally, when we look at it, should be a guy that at least had one or two student housing projects, or if I can say accommodation, before we can actually into it. We would look at I wouldn't say startups or first-time buyers. We've done it, but normally with that, we would then require big ups own contribution for us to then enter into that particular transaction. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what behaviors or characteristics, I mean, instantly give you confidence that a project will deliver on time and within budget?
I think for us, it's the developer behind it. That's key. The construction personnel, and basically its experience. Has he done this before? And we obviously go back and check what type of developments has he done, and was it on time and within budget before we then enter into a development. Yeah.
Right. So without naming names, can you maybe share a recent Gauteng-based student housing project that a business partners funded and what made it a success?
Okay, for us, it was one in Vanderbijl, but this was an existing one. It had about roughly 200 rooms available. And what made it unique is the location of this particular student housing. Also, the maintenance around it, because this student housing was then graded by NSFAS as a type of grading facility, which means they would have backup electricity, backup water, and that was ideal for us because it was 100% occupied, and because it was in short distance from university, it gave us comfort that this thing would work.
Okay, great. So there's also a growing focus on affordability, green design, and also social impact in student housing. How does business partners integrate those factors into funding decisions?
Okay, so if you look at business partners, we do have funds that allow you to actually green the building. So we would provide certain finance towards solar If you need a backup water facility, we can actually include that as part of the facility. So that's key to us in order to green the building. Yeah. In terms of the social side, for us, what we're doing is from a social impact perspective by providing the necessary student accommodation for the students. Then and also with regards to employment, we don't have a lot of employment with student housing, but to a certain extent, there is employment created through this particular mechanism.
Okay, great. So let's look ahead to the opportunities in 2026 and also beyond. Where do you see the next wave of opportunity in Gauteng student housing market or inner city conversions, maybe campus adjacent builds or even mixed use precincts?
Yeah, I think for us, it's if you look at Joburg itself, near Braamfontein and those areas, there's a lot of old dilapidated buildings, and I think that's ideal for student housing to convert it back into student housing. So, and we've seen recently a lot of that particular buildings are going up as high rises, either for residential development or so forth. But I think that's ideal for student housing. And I think that's where government can play a bigger role by allowing certain developers to acquire that particular building and then convert it instead of having it been hijacked and unruly characters in that particular buildings. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So, Darrell, finally, I mean, what practical advice would you like to give to emerging developers who want to enter the student accommodation space and attract funding from you?
I think the advice is do your homework, understand exactly the market you're entering into, the area you're going into, understand the requirements in terms of, like you said, is there zoning, is there consent? Look at the university's requirements because they got strict requirements. And then if you want to go the Nesfis route, they've also got their requirements. So that is ideal. If you have tick all those boxes, understand that if you buy the particular property, it's also going to ensure that you will be able to service the debt that comes with it. So it's no use you buying a property at 2 million and you can't even afford a loan of 1 million. So you have to do your homework. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good advice there. Darrell Rose, Regional Investment Manager of Business Partners Gauteng. That was incredibly insightful. Thank you for your time and for sharing such practical guidance. It is clear that business partners isn't just about finance. It's about a partnership, mentorship, and making viable projects happen in a challenging environment. So our viewers and listeners, if you're a property developer or entrepreneur looking for smart capital and guidance to take your next project forward, you visit businesspartners.co.za or click on the link below. We'll put you in touch with Darrell and his team to learn more about property development funding options. So I'm Neil Peterson along with Darrell Rose, and this has been another episode of Investor Talk Show where we turn property knowledge into power. See you next time. Thank you.